Have you ever actually stopped to, honestly evaluate the current state of your spiritual courtyard? If you take a really close look, what distractions are currently just sitting right there, right in the middle of your prayer life? Well, welcome. I'm stepping into the role of a seasoned mentor today because I really want to challenge you, especially those of you who are young ministry leaders. You see, we so often think of Jesus as just laid back and gentle, right? But today we're going to look at a moment where his fierce zeal for holiness literally disrupted the entire status quo.
So, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving deep into the Gospel of John, specifically chapter 2. And we're going to use this incredible historical account not just as some dry history lesson, no, but as a direct, practical blueprint for your modern ministry. We're looking at that massive transition from casual, distracted worship to genuine, righteous zeal. Okay, let's just dive right into this.
Here's our quick agenda for today's session. We'll start with distractions in the ancient temple, then move on to understanding true righteous zeal. After that, we'll see how resurrection proves divine authority before auditing your modern ministry, and finally, fostering a reverent worship culture. All right, Section 1, Distractions in the Ancient Temple, the Noise of Convenience. Let's set the scene. To really understand Jesus' radical reaction here, we've got to look at the ground reality of the first-century temple. Jesus traveled to Jerusalem for the Passover feast, which happened on the 14th day of the Jewish month of Nisan. Now, this was a mandatory pilgrimage for literally every Jewish male who lived nearby. Because Jerusalem sits up on a mountain, the text actually says he went up to the city. I want you to imagine the sheer volume of people for a second. Historians estimate the city swelled to over 1 million people. It was packed, it was chaotic, and it was bursting with travelers coming to offer their required sacrifices. Just picture the intense sensory overload, the thick dust, the blazing heat, and honestly, the overwhelming, undeniable smell of thousands and thousands of animals. Now, notice the architectural layout of the temple itself. The grounds were divided up into various courts. The outer court was the court of the Gentiles, and it was physically separated from the inner courts by this lattice barricade known as the soreg. And guys, this wasn't just some gentle, decorative fence. It bore these severe warning signs, literally stating that any foreigner who crossed it would only have themselves to blame for their ensuing death. Yeah, pretty intense. What this meant practically was that if you were a Gentile seeking to worship the God of Israel, that outer court was the absolute only place you were permitted to pray. So what does Jesus actually find when he arrives at this specific outer court? He finds a massive, chaotic marketplace. You see, because travelers needed to pay the mandatory half-shekel temple tax using specific non-Roman currency, money changers just set up shop right there. And because dragging a perfectly unblemished animal for miles and miles was exhausting, merchants sold oxen, sheep, and doves right on site. I mean, it was incredibly convenient. But this convenience came at a terrible, terrible cost. These vendors had completely taken over the only space reserved for the Gentiles. Instead of a quiet house of prayer for all nations, the Gentiles' worship space was just filled with the deafening noise of livestock and the relentless clinking of coins. Moving on to Section 2, Understanding True Righteous Zeal, Clearing the Space for Prayer. Jesus was intensely troubled by what he saw. He makes a whip of cords, drives out the sheep and oxen, pours out the money changers' coins, and literally overturns their tables. Now, a super popular view is that Jesus was just angry about price gouging, like he was fighting inflation. But listen to New Testament scholar D.A. Carson on this. He says, Jesus' complaint is not that they are guilty of sharp business practices, but that they should not be in the temple area at all. This is absolutely crucial. Jesus' rebuke had nothing to do with greed or capitalism. He was fiercely defending a holy space. He was totally outraged that convenience and commerce had completely destroyed the primary purpose of the temple, which was reverent prayer for all people. Now, as a mentor speaking to you young leaders, I have to give you a bit of a warning here. Please do not confuse your own sinful anger with Christ's holy, righteous zeal. Jesus' indignation was entirely focused on defending God's honor and protecting the worship space from marginalized people. Human anger, on the other hand, especially in our modern ministry operations, is usually selfish, prideful, or just some uncontrolled outburst simply because things didn't go our way. Jesus essentially used a divine defibrillator to shock the spiritual hearts of the people back to true, pure worship. Let's hit Section 3. Resurrection proves divine authority, the ultimate sign. So the Jewish leaders immediately challenged Jesus, essentially demanding a miraculous sign to prove he actually had the authority to regulate the temple like this. But Jesus doesn't give them a magic trick. Instead, he says something wild. Destroy this temple, and I will raise it up in 3 days." Well, they were completely baffled. They thought he meant Herod's massive 46-year building project, which, by the way, wasn't even completely finished yet. They completely missed the metaphor. They were so laser-focused on brick and mortar that they ignored the actual Lord of the temple standing right in front of them.
You see, Jesus was actually speaking about the temple of his own body. The temple was always supposed to be the place where heaven meets earth, where God's very presence dwelt. But Jesus was pointing to his ultimate sign, his death and resurrection. When Jesus died on the cross, the dividing curtain in the temple tore right down the middle. He literally broke down the walls, separating sinful humanity from God. And this builds the absolute foundation of our modern theology. Christ's resurrection serves as the ultimate, unshakable proof of his divine authority. Because he rose, a specific physical building is no longer necessary to connect to God. He is the true temple.
All right, Section 4, Auditing Your Modern Ministry, Identifying Spiritual Drift. Let's bring this home. It is remarkably easy for us to sit back and point fingers at those first-century money changers, right? But let's actually compare them directly to our own modern habits. Are we really that different? Look at this. In the ancient temple, they had animal vendors. Today, we bring our digital distractions right into the sanctuary. They relied on convenience-driven sacrifices. Today, we so often rely on a highly commercialized, production-heavy church culture that prioritizes efficiency over awe. They completely ruined the quiet prayer space with market noise, and today, our personal quiet times are rushed, crowded, and just noisy with endless smartphone notifications. In so many ways, convenience is currently overriding genuine worship for us, too. Listen to the wisdom of 19th century church leader J.C. Ryle on this exact matter. He said, "The man who brings his worldly matters with him when he professes to worship is doing that which is evidently most offensive to Christ." Wow. We absolutely must actively protect our ministry teams and, honestly, our own hearts from letting the massive machinery of modern church operations slowly replace the sacredness of holy worship.
Which brings us to Section 5. Fostering a reverent worship culture, the leader's steps.
I really want you to take this checklist into your next small group or leadership training session. Ask yourselves and be honest. Is convenience currently overriding genuine worship and how we run our events? How exactly are our digital habits ruining our capacity for quiet prayer? In what specific areas of life and ministry are we most prone to drift away from God's standards of holiness? And remember Paul's words that your very body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. So how are you managing and protecting that physical temple today? To help maintain personal spiritual purity, I highly recommend these 3 daily physical routines. Step 1, aggressively remove digital distractions before you enter into your quiet prayer time. Seriously, leave the phone in another room. Defend your court of prayer. Step 2, don't hide your failures. Continually confess the specific areas where you've drifted into commercialized ministry and ask Jesus to restore you. And step 3, consciously surrender your daily operations to Jesus' divine authority. Remember, the whole shebang belongs to him anyway. I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought. You've just seen Jesus' incredible zeal for the purity of his Father's house. You've seen the stark historical reality of how incredibly fast a place of worship can devolve into a marketplace of convenience. The Holy Spirit dwells in you. You are his temple. So what specific steps will you take this week to surrender to Jesus' authority and cleanse your own temple? Don't let this be just another explainer that you casually consume. Let it drive you to righteous, holy action starting today.